What's going on, guys? Wei and Jeremiah from Revolution here with Robin Tallendier, who is the founder of an incredible new brand called Atelier Wen, which merges Asian and European culture.
Yep.
How are you, sir?
I'm very fine, thank you. Very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. So anyway, as you can see, well, actually, when you watch this video, it'll probably be a little bit later today, but it's now 4:15, and we decided to very responsibly wait until 5 o'clock to start drinking our cocktails here in the Revolution Watch Bar. So now I'm going to have this sort of 5 to 10 minutes of actual coherence, which is rare for me. And so tell me everything about your brand. How did it start?
Yeah, of course. So actually, it all started when I was 14 years old, and my parents gave me a quartz Seiko chronograph for my birthday. And this kind of triggered something in my mind, beforehand, I didn't know anything about watches, but when I received it, I became so interested and I started looking for watches online. And it was the time when forums and those kind of platforms were still very important. So reading those, very quickly I got the impression, the feeling that to get a true watch, you need to get a mechanical one. But I thought, obviously I didn't really have the budget to buy a mechanical watch. Even an entry-level Tissot or Hamilton, so 300-400 euros, that was too expensive for my pocket money. And my parents so it would be kind of stupid to give me that kind of money because I'm not the heir of a famous publishing company. So
you're not the heir of the Tallendier.
No. So unfortunately, they didn't want to fund my newfound hobby,
right.
But I very badly wanted a mechanical watch. So reading online, I stumbled upon vintage Chinese mechanical watches. And it was still a time for a few dozen bucks, you could get something really, really decent. And I have to say I was kind of fortunate because with my parents, we would go to China quite often. So the following summer, we went to China, and with my hardly saved pocket money, I bought my very, very first Seagull, which was a nice automatic one. And then I got one, I got another one, I got a third one, and so on and so forth. And I started getting into vintage as well. And vintage is even cheaper, so you can literally, you could, because now the prices are increasing quite a bit, get dozens of those for almost nothing. And I found that super fascinating, and I started talking about it online on those forums. And because most people really didn't know much about it, some people started reading what I was writing, and I kind of befriended one of the moderators. And one summer, when I was in my first year of uni, I won a scholarship to go study in Beijing for the whole summer.
Oh, wow.
And actually, one night I went out, partied in a club. That was really fun, really nice. And next morning I was super hungover, so I canceled all my plans. And I was feeling so down. So to cheer me up, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go watch shopping. So I went to the Beijing watch store on 1 Fujian Avenue, and there I stumbled upon one of the guys I was chatting with online on this watch music forum. And it was pure coincidence. Think about it. What's the probability or likelihood of that? It was I think I had more chance of winning Euro Millions or something like this. So I was like, shit, are you this guy? And he was like, yes, I am. Are you this guy? And this guy was not even Chinese. He was Canadian, and he was on holiday in Beijing. Super nice. So he took me with him, and he introduced me to the head of the China Horologe Association, a person named Li Wei. And I clicked with Li Wei. We became friends, and the next year, actually, I went back to Beijing, this time to do a whole year of exchange studies in Peking University. And basically, he took me around with him, and we spent the whole year traveling to factories, visiting watchmakers, visiting craftsmen, wow, distributors. So it was really fascinating because, usually it's an environment which is kind of closed. There's a saying, which is that in China, there's one place where you cannot enter, and it's factories. You cannot go in a factory and say hi. So it was nice because I really got to visit most of the big ones, and it was super, super cool. But then when I went back to France, while there, I saw all those people. I saw some very, very talented craftsmen. I saw people who have been doing this job for decades. And I saw also people who are really, really passionate. And when I went back to France and to the UK, I was telling people about what I saw, and they didn't really believe me. They were like, no, it's not possible. Made in China is shit. For them, it was a bunch of factories with kids making the things on the floor, and they were and they are paid $1 per day.
Right.
And they were like, no, you're telling bullshit, it doesn't make sense. And I felt a bit triggered. I was like, it's definitely not what I saw. It's definitely not the people I saw. And I thought, also it's lacking respect to those people, because there were some watchmakers that had been doing that for 40 years, 30 years. It was all their life, and they loved their jobs. Wow. They loved watches. And still in France and the UK, people were just laughing out loud about that. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to make a watch brand. And we're going to make watches that are super good, super interesting, and I will basically just try to destroy that stereotype that made in China is shit in terms of quality, but also shit in terms of creativity. We're going to be working with Chinese designers. We're going to be looking at Chinese culture, and we're going to come up with like fresh concepts that will be like interesting to wear as well, and also super qualitative. So basically that's how it started. I have a business partner, a guy named Wilfried, who's really into entrepreneurship, and he was also one of the triggers because he did businesses beforehand, and he actually like really pushed me to do that. So he also did that exchange, and when we both went back to the UK, he was like, Robin, let's start this business. And thankfully, Wilfried is born in Hong Kong. He spent all his childhood and teenage years there, and he speaks perfect Chinese. So he was the guy in charge of like making the thing happen, like making the watches, finding the suppliers, doing all that. We spent roughly a year, like doing some designs, finding designers, doing prototypes. And basically speaking, when we had both like graduated, we had prototypes ready, and we were ready to launch the thing. We used Kickstarter because we still had no money at all, and it was kind of a good way to crowdfund the thing without like having too much at risk. Fortunately, it went well, so we sold about like around like 100,000 US for our very first series, which at 23 was for us like shitloads of money. We felt like we were extremely rich. It's quite funny because like we were doing those business trips in China, and the first business trip we did, we were like, okay, now we have money, let's go to this fancy hotel, fancy restaurants. And then as time went by, like the standard of the business trip each time would decrease. And at the end of the day, we were staying in a very, very dubious like hourly hotel. And like even our interns like were ashamed that we would be staying here because it's not the kind of place where you usually stay like for a business trip, let's say, maybe for different kind of enjoyment. But yeah, so yeah, we moved to Hong Kong. We were doing that. He was doing well, and then we tried to launch in mainland China, and that's where we kind of hit a wall because we realized that the cost of doing marketing in mainland China is actually way more expensive than in the West. You have a cost of visibility which is higher, and conversion rates which are lower. So it meant that you needed to spend a lot of money in order to be seen and to be purchased, which we did not have.
Yes.
That led to a bit of trouble. So basically, we had to stop everything. We paid our suppliers, but then in a matter of a week, we both left Hong Kong. I went back to France. We went to Singapore because his brother was living here, free housing basically. And I had to find a job because really that was the thing to do. So I started working for a PE fund in Paris. That was nice. And on the side, we were still keeping Atelier Wen. And slowly, the sales were resuming a bit more. And then one day we were like sold out. And at that time we had like enough money to like restart the development of this series called Perception.
Nice.
Why did we decide to make this watch how it is? First let me tell you what's interesting about that. Like the main point really is the dial, which is like handmade guilloche by China's only guilloche master craftsman. And his name is Cheng Yusai. And also, according to my research, he's the only one in the whole of Asia. I really believe there would be someone in Japan doing that. I spent hours searching, but apparently there's none. And all the Grand Seiko and Cradle dials with like those kind of textures are not guilloche. They are either stamped or CNC'd,
yes.
But not handmade guilloches. Wow. So quite likely he's the only one in Asia.
Where is he based?
He's based in Henan province. Okay. He's near like Zhengzhou. And he lives like it's quite funny. This guy has a really nice story. So he comes actually from a poor village in Henan province. Grew up super poor. He was really bad at school, so his parents were like, "You have to drop school and now earn a living to support your family." So they sent him to Beijing at 14. He was like drifting across like very shitty factory jobs, nothing stable, earning very, very low money, and still like he had grit. So he went into an apprenticeship. But that lasted like till he was 30. So only by the time he was 30, he was able to have a qualified job. And that was like a kind of like machinist job. And finally, like his life was settling in order, he was earning decent, he had a wife, he had kids, he had a flat. And then one day a friend of his, like old friend of his came and like he showed him an old Russian guilloche cigarette box, like dating like from the Tsar era. And the guy completely went nuts. He found that extremely beautiful. Oh. And he was like, you know what? I'm gonna drop everything and do guilloche. And so he literally dropped everything. He leaves Beijing, he left his job, he left his flat, and he moved like to a rural place in order to do this. But of course, he had no idea how to do that.
Right.
He had no machine. It also did not help that he did not know how to use the internet back then. So he couldn't like look for inspirations online. So he spent like the first 4 years trying to build a ROS engine. Of course, it failed.
Incredible.
Yeah, he built his own, and it failed. But he kept on doing it. And then like finally he was able to make one after more than 4 years. And it's funny because like the way he made it, therefore, is like different from like the traditional like French and Swiss ROS engines.
Yes.
And he actually got a patent for that, for his own ROS engine.
Robin, you said just now earlier in the conversation that there's, maybe unfairly a poor impression of Chinese watchmaking and Chinese watchmaking industry, right?
Yeah.
But if you look on the AHCI website, there are Chinese watchmakers who are members, of the AHCI. And you were telling me earlier that, clock making in China goes all the way back to the 19th and 20th century. So there's a very storied history that I think, most people don't know about. And maybe you and Wilfried have really brought that to the fore with your brand.
That's definitely our goal. I mean, we want to show that actually there's like high quality, highly qualified, highly interesting, highly creative, like people in that industry in China. And the thing is that I feel like people sort of got blindsided by like just a few years in the history of the country, and that sort of like affect the whole perception of it. Right. But yeah, actually there's definitely much more to it. It's a very dynamic industry. It's full of talented people. It's full of passionate people. To me, that's one of the most important things. Like the people who work there, like a lot of them are really passionate. To them, is their life. And so we really want to bring that forward. And the fact that you have more and more Chinese watchmakers at the AHCI, I think it's also really, really good like dynamism, because hopefully that will also help uplifting those perceptions and breaking those stupid bias.
Yeah.
In a way, sometimes I feel, it's a bit like what happened with Japan, because like for many years, people also thought like made in Japan was really shitty, because it's true that at some point in Japanese history, they were making like very, very affordable goods, and they were known for affordability and lower price. But look at how Japan is now. Now it's a synonym for like reliability, for creativity, for almost like perfection. Like to me, if
they beat the big guys at their own game,
and they had to, and then they got kicked out because they were better than them. But to me, Japan is really like the. I mean, in watches, like if you look at Grand Seiko Credo, is the embodiment of like
absolutely
extreme, absolute reliability, perfection, consistency, and I feel one day China will be there too. And,
Robin, you know what? I think the first thing that you realize when you're holding one of these watches is that the quality of it, from the bracelet to the case to the dial, is absolutely stunning. But even like the indexes, the hands, to the feeling of the crown, because it's a screw down crown, it all feels great. And I think that's one of the first things that you recognize is because what's the retail price of this watch is?
The retail is like $2,588 USD.
And so it's actually like a pretty tremendous value proposition, because this is the first thing you realize. And the second thing is that it resonates with this very unique charm, because it is in fact like kind of a merger between a Western styled watch with a lot of Chinese craftsmanship in it. The dial, certainly. Tell us a little bit about like your inspiration for the design of this watch.
Yeah, of course. So when we started working, sorry,
Jeremiah.
Sorry.
Can I take a look at yours?
Yeah, of course. So basically, when we started working on this series, Perception. At the beginning also we had like some business considerations. We looked at the market trends and we saw that like steel sport chic integrated bracelet, that's a trend doing well. So we wanted this watch to be our take on that trend.
Right.
And we felt that those watches, they have a very urban character. So we were like, okay, so what could be the red thread? And very quickly the concept of Chinese architecture came as a very relevant red thread and overall inspiration. And so therefore, this is like what guided the design. And this is something that you see like through many different aspects of the watches, if I may. Of
course.
So first of all, like if you look at the case shape, of course, again, it's our take on the like steel sport chic 70s trend. But you look at the case shape, like it mimics like the roof shape of a pagoda. And you see that, you see it here as well. As well here, it's not like fully flat. It's actually like going up slightly and then going down a bit like a roof.
Yes.
And actually it's very cool because when you have a lot of light going on the watch, it really like disperses the light like on the two sides, and it creates some balance and harmony. But thirdly, like which is really cool, is the way we constructed the dial. We followed this old principle called Senmao architecture, which was like an old building technique which consisted in like stacking elements on top of each other without any nails. And basically this dial has like 4 layers of height. So you have a base plate, and then on this base plate you have like one like plate which is guilloché, which is like on top of it, and then like on the guilloché dial you have cutouts. And in those cutouts, you have the indexes which come nesting into that. And then finally, within the indexes, you also have some kind of like tenons. And there you have like an elevated chapter ring, which comes to, again, like nest into this. So yeah, we basically reinterpreted that whole principle into like the way we build the dial. And why is that relevant? Like we felt that it would give like a great sense of depth, because it's like basically like built this way, and this sense of depth is being magnified by the guilloché pattern, which like converges towards the center, and it kind of clashes with the watch thinness because the watch is only like 9.4 millimeters thick. And so it creates a kind of vertigo, like the depth of the dial and the thinness of the watch. And we felt also that's one of the best way this architectural inspiration can be felt, like how on the wrist it feels. You look at that and you're like, oh shit, it's actually deep, and then you turn it and it's incredibly thin. So
it's like a nice dynamic tension.
It
kind of plays with your perception,
exactly. No, but the name comes from that, because it's a watch that really like the way you look it, like your perception of it will like dramatically change. Like it will look many different things depending on from where you look. So that's one of the reasons why we called it this way. But also like the architectural inspiration can be felt like through the of course, yeah, through the case back. So you have like here a guarding lion, which you usually find at the entrance of major buildings such as temples or
Like
imperial
guardian,
buildings.
right?
Exactly. And yeah, so we had one. We remade one actually with strokes that looks like clouds, so that it gives this little bit of a misty feeling. And then when the rotor is aligned with the lion, it looks like the lion is actually like laughing or extremely happy, which is kind of cool. And it's like, again, it's a bit less restrained than the rest of the watch. It clashes with it, but again, like this kind of like dynamism and tension is really like within the watch overall theme. So yeah, we felt it was quite nice.
Well, it's funny, you were mentioning before that when the rotor is not covering the balance wheel,
Yeah.
the balance wheel actually looks like the golden ball that the lion puts his paw on top of when it hits outside of the building.
Exactly.
Right.
So actually, funny thing is that it was not intentional, but then like some of our customers noticed that, and they were like, "Oh, it's really cool because that's a common theme you find like in Chinese folk art." And yeah, so we were quite happy to have this as well. Like,
Robin, could you tell us a bit about the movement and maybe your movement supplier? I believe that's the Dandong watch factory.
Exactly.
Right.
So we work with Dandong Peacock.
Right.
As the name implies, it's located in Dandong in the northeast of China. It's one of the oldest of the countries. It's quite interesting because when beforehand in China you had like one vertically integrated manufacturer in each province, and each of those manufacturers would make everything from like movement to case, dial to hands. And then when the country opened, most of those like couldn't really like fight against foreign competition, so most of them just went bankrupt. But the few that survived, such as Dandong, are today the only producers of movements in China. Then, because the watch industry moved to the south, like to Guangdong, but those companies mainly make parts such as like case, dial, hands. None of them really make movements. Movements are from the historical players. So Dandong is one of those historical players. It dates back, if I'm not mistaken, to 1958. So yeah, one of the oldest, and they have been working with us since the beginning, because personally I felt their quality was one of the greatest. I mean, I visited all of them: Shanghai, Seagull, Beijing, Dandong, and Dandong was by far the one I thought was the best in terms of quality. And this movement is based on their new line. So they have a new line called SL1, which is a very thin movement line. And for us, they made this SL1 588, which is customized for us. And the difference with the traditional SL1 is that you have a slightly slimmer profile.
Wow.
You have more power reserve. It's around 41, but the normal calibers should be around 38. And accuracy is a bit better, so it leaves the factory at ±10, whereas usual movements is +25, -15.
Okay.
And then finally, we'll have it's a proto, so there it's still here. It will have the ghost position removed on the production models.
Oh, okay, great. Which would normally be used for the date.
Exactly, but there's a date. So.
Okay. Fantastic. And so from what I understand, when you launched Perception, the watches basically sold out very quickly.
Yeah. In just 16 hours. So that was quite a nice surprise for us.
Right.
I told people I couldn't believe it, and some people thought it was false modesty. But our first series took much longer to sell out, so I genuinely could not believe it. But it's great because it shows that that there's support for this concept, and it's quite a leap in terms of of finishing, of quality, of even design and conceptual research compared to our first series. And one of our worries was that maybe people wouldn't really follow us. Maybe the concept can only survive in a lower price realm.
Right.
But the fact that there were even more of them and they were even more enthusiastic, to us it's pretty good because it shows that actually there's a strong appetite for high quality and with fresh designs Chinese watches. So it was nice.
And am I correct that the watches come both in the integrated bracelet as well as a rubber strap? Or
Nope. No. Actually, there's no choice per se. It comes with the metal bracelet as a default, and then we sell those at extra.
Okay.
But we basically sell them at almost cost. It's $149, but it includes the buckle. The buckle is a bit elaborate. So
the buckle's nice, actually.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. It's super costly to make. So it better be nice.
There's also a button here on the clasp. What does that do?
It's on-the-fly micro adjustment.
Oh, okay.
Wow, it's a micro adjuster.
Yeah, of course.
Wow.
It's a punch point with gear shade.
So actually, you
Micro
press
adjuster
it.
on my Daytona.
Yeah.
You press it, and then you can extend by one.
Wow.
And you can do it on the wrist, which is the cool thing. So you press.
Dude, that's very impressive.
And then you put it back and tack, and then it gets out.
Easy.
Yeah. Well, we're still working on refining that design. We feel we can make it a little bit more smooth to use. So right now it's not bad, but on the production pieces it's gonna be a bit better. We're working with our class guy to modify it a bit so it's nicer to use.
Yeah, because now we see on your website everything's sold out. I think people will want to know what can they expect next. When will be the next release?
Yeah, of course. So we hope to have a very small retail batch, when just after the pre-ordered pieces are delivered. It's basically gonna be whatever extra dials can chunk the Guilloche Master make.
Right.
So it's probably going to be a bit less than 100 because he's already working. But it's not going to be a lot, but that's all that he can do.
I guess that becomes now one of your biggest constraints is how many dials can
actually it's funny, now it's the bottleneck. This afternoon I was working on our yearly budget, and I was the main variable is how many dials can he make. And when will one of his apprentices manage to start making dials on his own?
Right.
But that's definitely the bottleneck. But then the next exciting plan as well for us is working on a chrono version of that.
Oh, wow.
With a very, very, very interesting and unique movement, something which has not been done before in China.
Oh wow, that's exciting.
So it's again a leap forward, but hopefully I'm quite confident.
Please come back and show us.
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to, definitely.
Well, on behalf of both of us, thank you so much for stopping by. We love the watches; they're great on the
Thank
wrist.
you so much.
Congratulations, man.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Robin.
Thank you so much, guys.